Hello, everyone, and welcome to the StarCityGames.com Louisville Open quarterfinals. Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan here in the booth. Nick Miller down in the sideboard getting those elimination rounds started as we prepare to watch number 21 on the SCG Tour leaderboard, Tom Ross, the SCG Tour Player of the Year in 2016 with 8 rack against Jared Hall, number 7 overall seed, playing white-black Eldrazi Taxes. You see the hand here for Hall. It's Dark Confidant and not much else. You mentioned right at the top that Tom has had some difficulty beating Dark Confidant here this weekend, so you can see why Jared kept the hand, and Tom was able to answer it. For now, it's a Thalia for Jared Hall as he falls down to 19 from the Caves of Koilos. And we'll see if Tom can actually take care of what is a pretty annoying threat there in Thalia.
So that hand might look a little bit sketchy from Hall's side, but it does have a couple benefits to it, namely that it's immune to Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek. He can just cast the stuff that he draws. And he has enough mana to work with where even if he gets to things like Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher, he might be able to get them on the table.
And he's actually picked up a copy of Reality Smasher. Now, he can't cast it just yet, but it is certainly a threat worth working towards, as here comes a Funeral Charm to take care of Thalia. It's that +2.
-1.
-1. We go back over to Tom now, see if he wants to fire off another discard spell here. He will go with a Raven's Crime. That is going to take care of a Caves of Koilos, which is going to leave Jared Hall with a Reality Smasher that Tom doesn't know about. And an Eldrazi Temple that he does. So now Jared's got to figure out what card he wants to discard.
Dude, don't think too hard about it. They're all going away.
There goes the Reality Smasher, and now Tom says, give me another one as I'm going to retrace Raven's Crime again. So now Jared is without a hand. See what he drew, something he cannot cast, so we go back over to Tom Ross. A Swamp, a Smallpox, and a Fatal Push here. Tom says, I'll retrace Raven's Crime again, make you discard a card. That's exactly what Jared does, discards a Thought-Knots here. Back to Tom we go. There's Shrieking Affliction, looking for a win condition. We just found one.
Yeah, We're almost done here. Tom's backup here is Smallpox too, so he's just hoping that Hall will deploy a threat.
There is Shrieking Affliction. And you see Jared's going to take a look at that, and we'll take a look at it too. It is kind of that variant on the rack. A little bit different than the rack. Not an artifact, of course. It is an enchantment. But it works all the same as here's Eldrazi Displacer. That's the draw here for Jared. He had to take 3 in his upkeep. A Shrieking Affliction says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, he or she loses 3 life, which is quite a bit and a great win condition for this deck. This is where the 8-rack moniker comes from.
Now Hall in the position of, do I keep these cards in the hand and lose them to Raven's Crime, or do I cast them and lose to the Shrieking Affliction?
It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. He says, I'm not going to play anything. Actually drew a Displacer. Here's a Mutavault from Tom. Tom with Smallpox, Fatal Push, and Mutavault in hand. And he's actually going to discard Mutavault to Raven's Crime, bring Hall down 3 more life.
I think it's close, but with Hall, with 2 cards in hand, knocking him down to 1 triggers the Shrieking Affliction. Plus you knock out a card out of his hand. So.
Yep.
I like the retrace there, even though Mutavault, an attractive card to play.
We'll take a look at Raven's Crime, too, very quickly for those of you unfamiliar. You don't see retrace all that much anymore. You know, I think of a card like Flame Jab, but Raven's Crime also pretty good here. Target player discards a card.
I mean, it's a historically bad mechanic.
Yeah. Here is Eldrazi Displacer.
It's the same mistake of buyback, which is the fundamental failing is there are some things that are fun to have happen once that are not fun to happen 17 times.
And you don't like discarding it much, do you?
You know.
Here's Smallpox. That's going to take care of Eldrazi Displacer, take care of Jared Hall's land in hand. And there goes a Ghost Quarter, too. He'll also lose a life from the Smallpox. Tom will lose a land. He'll have to discard a card.
He's in the rack.
Yeah, he is.
He's in the torture rack.
Yes, he is.
He's up.
Well, there's no letting go here either, probably.
No, I think if Hall stacked his deck, he would lose.
Well, there's Dark Confidant.
I guess that's some hope.
That's a really good draw, except for the Fatal Push that Tom has left in his hand. So he'll take 1 from the Caves because Tom doesn't have an Urborg anymore. Tom actually sacrificed that. Pretty smart, actually, as Tom will draw a card. And now there is a push to take care of Dark Confidant. And now Hall will take 3 more. He's going to fall down to 4. He'll draw a card, pass the turn back. We go back over to the boss. He's got lands to retrace, so he'll discard a swamp, make Hall discard a Tide Hollow Sculler.
Pretty fun. Pretty fun. That got cast for the 6th time this game.
Down to 1, and 1 isn't none,
fun.
but it's close enough. Tom Ross going to win game number 1 here over Jared Hall. 8-rack puts another opponent into submission here in game number 1 as white-black Eldrazi taxes couldn't get anything to stick.
Now, retrace is not as bad as buyback because at least there's the hope that you might not have a land.
Sure.
Whereas buyback, once I cast Capsize on you, you have on turn 1, you have a good sense of what turns 2 through infinity are going to look like.
You have an idea, yeah.
But still, a rough mechanic, not going to see a reprint.
You don't think we're going to see that come back?
I do not believe we will see retrace reprinted.
We will take a look at Jared Hall's sideboard. He's got 2 Blessed Alliance, 2 Core Firewalker, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Stony Silence, another copy of Reality Smasher, and Linvala Keeper of Silence. Mirren Crusader, good text on that card, along with an Orzhov Pontiff, a Fatal Push, a Zealous Persecution, and a Wasteland Strangler.
Mirren Crusader, and that is it.
Any interest in Rest in Peace? Like, because of what Raven's Crime just did?
I don't think you can afford to have a card that just you play that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Everything needs to work on its own. I'm even skeptical of Aether Vial's impact on the matchup. And once you're there, certainly cards like Rest in Peace can't be in the consideration.
All right, well, we're going to go over to Tom Ross, who's got 4 Leyline of the Void, 4 Delirium Skynes, 2 Death Shadow, 2 Bantu's Last Reckoning, pardon me, a Fatal Push, a Shadow of Doubt, and one of Tom's favorite one-ofs, the old Asylum Visitor.
I think we've seen a mixture of these cards coming in this kind of matchup throughout the last 2 days. I think the Asylum Visitor, the Fatal Push, and the 2 copies of Bantu's Last Reckoning will come in. If he thinks he's got enough dead weight here, we might see the Delirium Skeins as well.
A couple of goodies there for Tom. A couple of goodies there for him to bring in. So it does look to be a pretty difficult matchup for Jared Hall. And we'll analyze this matchup and give you some results of the other ones here in just a moment. But we got to talk about the StarCityGames.com weekly sale one last time here, folks, because you've got the opportunity, not a lot of time left, only until 10:59 a.m. tomorrow, to get up to 25% off of some modern favorites.
Head over to go.starcitygames.com/weekly sale to check out what is on sale. Every week, Monday, 11 o'clock Eastern Time in the morning, we post a new sale, so make sure to be going back to the website at least once a week to check out what the sale is. For now, and you're running out of time, so just head over there when you get a moment, up to 25% off select modern favorites.
Got some updates here for you, so we'll go over those real quick. Now we know Tom Ross is currently up a game. Let's take a look at Harlan Fear versus Caleb Shearer. Caleb Shearer is down a game to Harlan Fear. Harlan Fear was able to win game number 1 with his Jeskai control deck. You had a feeling that may happen?
I think game 1, the presence of Spell Queller is just really problematic for Caleb's deck. And there's other things going on too. There's some other counter spells, a lot of bolts to break up the spell discounters that he's playing, but for me the real problem is Spell Queller.
We'll take a look at more Jeskai Control, and Brandon Dollaway currently up a game with Jeskai Control over Clay Spickelmeyer, playing his 5-color Shadow deck. Maybe a little bit of a surprise there?
Not really. I think most of these matchups, the only matchup here that felt not particularly close to me is the one that we are watching. All the other matchups feel, not quite coin flips to me, but, close matchups.
We got Tyler Lutz, number 1 overall seed with good old Jund. He has tied things up against Sam Schaefer. Schaefer playing Grixis Death Shadow, so they're going to a third and final one. And that matchup feels pretty darn close, too.
Yeah, all of them except, like I said, this one feels comfortably in Tom's favor. And the other ones all feel close.
Well, Tom is currently up a game. We take a moment to learn a little bit more about him. You see the shirt. He is trained to be a firefighter, as we've mentioned.
Volunteering?
Yeah.
For, is it Roanoke County?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm digging it. Recently started training to become a volunteer firefighter. I got to ask what that kind of entails, what kind of training you go through. Because it's not, I imagine it's since you're a volunteer, you're not going through the rigorous training that a firefighter has to go through.
I would imagine it's, can you climb up a tree and then climb down a tree with a kitten underneath one arm?
Then I would fail.
That's important.
I would fail immediately. Couldn't do that.
How good is your storytelling around a round of beers at the local bar?
He's good at that.
How well do you, without really trying, charm recent divorcees in the area? I imagine it's multifaceted.
Yeah, that's what the volunteer firefighter training is.
I volunteered on the rescue squad while I was in high school.
Okay.
So I can only speak to that level of training. I can't speak to firefighting.
Can you climb a tree?
Depends how tall the tree is, I guess.
Okay, I'll ask you this. Could you climb a tree back then? Were you a tree climber?
Yeah, I could.
Okay. All right. I never could.
Yeah,
Never
I mean,
could.
in high school, I was, maybe a $130 soaking wet, so
Okay.
that made it a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah, I can never really get up and down a tree. I'm not a climber.
Yeah.
Not much of a climber. Play some sports and
But
stuff.
you should ask Tom. I don't really know what the training entails. I only have my best guesses.
I hope he gets to use the hose. That's really all I ask, is that he gets to fire up the hose. That's like a dream of mine.
The hose?
Yeah, I just want to. I want to ride in a fire truck when like it's doing its thing, because that sounds like it would just be kind of fun. And then I just want to blast someone with the hose.
That sounds
Not something, someone. Just light them up. Looks pretty powerful. Plus, I kind of want to figure out like how like a hydrant works, and how you hook a hose to it, and like just what's the systems of it all.
I grew up in a very, very small town. It's, I say Hillsboro, and Hillsboro was, 25,000 people when I was a kid. It's not the biggest place. But I think technically I grew up in a place called Flagtown, which is worth a look at the Wikipedia page.
Okay.
We had our own volunteer fire department.
Okay.
All I know about it, in Flagtown was a town of, it's maybe 1,000 people or so.
Okay.
And what I know about our volunteer fire department was our trucks are green instead of red. That's a calling card.
That's strange.
And the fire department was adjacent to the local bar, and this was occasionally a problem. You can go check out the Wikipedia page, Flagtown, spelled like you would imagine, New Jersey, and for more details. It's a really good read.
All right. Fair enough. Why are the trucks green?
I don't know.
Like, are your high school colors green or something?
Maroon and gold.
That makes very little sense to me.
But Flagtown is, it's its own separate thing from Hillsboro.
Sure. I don't know the rules. Here's a copy of Ether Vial. We'll get things going here in game number 2. Tom was thinking Raven's Crime right away. He's got a lot of lands in his hand. You can see that.
Start going to work.
Oh, there is Raven's Crime.
And yeah, this is my concern about the vial. Now, what's nice about it is it looks like it allowed Hall to keep a one-lander.
Yes.
He might be able to get some stuff on the table. That's great. The issue is, he might get his hand torn apart via Raven's Crime and not even have anything left over to vial into play.
That's very likely.
And you're just down the card.
Yep.
Hall also decided to take the play for game number 2, it appears.
Yeah, it looks that way. Since he kicked things off with a vial, where we've seen some players actually draw against Tom, and actually Tom prefers to be on the draw. Now, I'm curious how Tom feels about being on the draw against an Ether Vial deck. And right now, Jared Hall, he actually picked up another land. He picked up an Eldrazi Temple. Now, it doesn't allow him to cast any of the cards in his hand. He's got all white spells in his hand. So he was thinking, am I going to play this, or would I rather just discard this? And it looks like he'd rather discard it to Raven's Crime. So you see the hand here for Jared Hall. Mirran Crusader, Thalia, 2 Scullers, that Eldrazi Temple. He saved that temple because you can see in his hand, doesn't do anything.
Yeah, his plan here, I think, is just to lean on Aether Vial and try to squeeze out whatever threats he can.
So now Tom's got to figure out what card he wants to take. Thalia, as an example, really does complicate things with regards to Raven's Crime. So you kind of want to take that. But Mirran Crusader has protection from black, so you kind of want to take that. We got our first match result. And that's Harlan Fear, who you had a feeling was going to be able to get by Caleb Shearer. Just too much interaction for Caleb to get through.
I thought the matchup got a little bit better for Caleb post-board because Empty the Warrens is, allows him to pivot a little bit. He gets some bolts to interact with Spell Queller, but still an uphill battle.
For Harlan, this is his 5th SCG Tour Top 8. He does have that win back in Richmond in 2014 where he won with Jeskai Ascendancy combo, beat Shaheen Sarani in the finals. Mirran Crusader is going to bite the dust. We go back to Tom. He'll retrace Raven's Crime, and I think we're going to predictably see the Eldrazi Temple bite the dust there.
Yeah, Hall's plan here is pretty clear here. I think we're going to set that vial to 2, keep it there for a while, and he's got some good 2-drops. It's interaction.
So now we are going to go over to Jared Hall, who actually picked up a copy of Leonin Arbiter for the turn. Vial up to 2. Now he can only do things 1 at a time. Can't play 2 creatures at a time. Only got the 1 land, so he'll pass the turn back. We'll go to Tom Ross. In the draw step, we're going to see a Tide Hollow Sculler. Smallpox Fatal Push. Along with Liliana of the Veil and 2 copies of Mutavault.
This is a classic, don't worry about it.
Yeah, take whatever you take Fatal Push, you lose your guy to Smallpox. You take Smallpox, you lose your guy to Fatal Push. You give him Smallpox back. But you might want to actually take Liliana of the Veil. Among all of them, not entirely sure what card you want to take. Not sure it matters all that much, like you mentioned.
It does not matter. I mean, I'm trying to even think what's the one you want to. I guess Smallpox is the only thing that. I guess Liliana of the Veil impacts this turn.
I don't want him to have Liliana.
Yeah, I guess I guess it's Liliana. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, you leave him with Liliana. If you leave him with Liliana in hand, he's just going to play Liliana, minus it, kill your Sculler, and then get your card back, and then he can start plussing it too. So,
yeah. Well, all of these end with the road of he gets his card back.
That's true. That's true. So we'll see if Tom wants to go the smallpox route right now, or if he wants to go to Fatal Push. What's the boss want to do?
And remember that he's playing against a second Sculler in hand that he knows about too.
Mm-hmm. Got another result here for you as Brandon Dalloway, number 4 overall seed, playing Jeskai Control, able to take care of Clay Spickelmeyer, playing 5-color Death Shadow. Brandon wins 2 games to 0, so he's moving on to the semifinals. So for you Jeskai Control fans, they've both moved on. Tom's going to play a Mutavault, and he's just going to pass the turn back right now, it appears. So we're going to go over to Jared. He's going to leave his vial on 2. He's got all those 2 drops in hand. Picked up a copy of Wasteland Strangler. Sculler might be coming in here.
Tom might be willing to trade a Mutavault for it.
I was thinking the exact same thing, because the goal is just to attrition you into the ground.
Yep.
Maybe we'll see the push now. Okay, we will. So Fatal Push is going to take care of that. Liliana is going to go back to the grip. And now in the draw step, we might see Sculler again. And we will. So, cards look very familiar. Liliana's going to go back over there. Tom has picked up a Swamp. It's a Smallpox, a Swamp, and a Mutavault. That's the hand there for Tom Ross. Jared Hall's going to get those contents written down. Make sure he knows exactly what to play around. Now, we can't forget the interaction between Tidehollow Sculler and Wasteland Strangler. Wasteland Strangler card we'll take a look at here very quickly. Not a card you see a ton of in Modern. It is seen in this white-black Eldrazi Taxes deck. And it can actually take the card that Tidehollow Sculler has exiled and give a creature -3/-3.
Yep.
So it's a little funky interaction, but it is one that could matter here, especially if Jared wants to move that vial up to 3. Now, what's interesting is he's got other 2-mana spells in his hand, so I think he might want to just leave the vial on 2. And this will make things even easier.
Yeah, my guess here is that he'll just now get rid of the Wasteland Strangler.
See what card he wants to discard here. Tom's ready to lose his Mutavault. Lane and Arbiter is going to go to the graveyard.
Interesting that he's keeping the Wasteland Strangler.
I'm a little surprised as well. And Tom will just pass the turn back. So we're going to go over to Jared Hall. He'll draw a card, picked up a copy of Reality Smasher. We're a long way away from that. Here is Thalia. Pass that turn back over to Tom Ross. He'll draw a card, picked up a copy of Urborg. Here is Mutavault. Pass the turn back. He's got to get to Liliana. And Jared says, I'm going to move this vial up to 3. Yes, I will. So Hall will draw a Thought-Knots here.
Well,
now,
that's actually kind of nice here because he gets to go 3, 4, 5 through his vial.
He does. He does. Things are getting a little interesting here now. Tom will draw a card. Picked up a Smallpox. Liliana, excuse me, Thalia causing some problems. Liliana's still in hand.
And this vial has allowed Hall to play a really resource-like game. I mean, this is almost a perfect draw in its own way of just playing a vial and not drawing any lands.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of the plan-ish. Yeah, he's going to leave Liliana at 3, will Tom. And now he's got to decide if he wants to put this up or down. And that's a real question here.
I think the last card in his hand is a Smallpox.
It is.
I'd be surprised if he just...
And it looks like Jared might be responding to Liliana on the stack with a vial activation. So now it's with the minus on the stack. Okay. So here comes Wasteland Strangler. That'll enter the battlefield, and now he'll sacrifice that, so Thalia will be left around. All right, that's in. Vial's going up to 4, so here comes Thought-Knots here, folks. This game's gotten mighty interesting. Caves of Koilos the draw. Thalia's going to bite the dust. I think we might see a draw step Thought-Knots here. Draw step, Thought-Knot. Mutavault and Smallpox, pretty easy choice. Mutavault will be the play for the turn, most likely. Yep, play that, pass the turn back. Jared Hall's got a pretty good understanding of the matchup now.
Now, if he goes up to 5 with this Vial, it's worth noting he's on no lands at this point. This Vial is now only on Reality Smasher. If Tom is able to find Bantu's Last Reckoning, Hall might be kind of locked out of the game at that point.
Yeah.
Because his Vial doesn't facilitate anything.
I think we might see double Mutavault try to block Thought-Knots here.
So, doing that, obviously you get the Thought-Knots here off the battlefield, and you get to draw a card for your troubles.
Yep.
The problem is that if you draw Bantu's Last Reckoning, you're now a mana short. So you need, because of Thalia, so you need land plus Bantu's Reckoning at this point.
Well, he drew the land. He did draw the land. Here's SCGKY. Let's pass the turn back. Now Tom will draw a card. Didn't get a good look at it. It's just another swamp, so he's going to play Raven's Crime. There goes Flicker Wisp. Pass the turn back. In for 7. Ross is going to fall down to 3. I think it's going to have to be Bantu's Last Reckoning. It's Wrench Mine. That's not going to do it. And Jared Hall is going to win this game. White-Black Eldrazi Taxes. 8-Rack going to go to game number 3. A wonky one to be sure, but that's kind of the power of Vial, where if he only draws 1, he might be okay.
If he draws a Vial and basically no lands, which is what we saw that game, Vial can do a lot of lifting in terms of giving Hall the resources he needs to work with. In a game where you draw a Vial, 3 lands and 3 spells, I think on the average the Vial is going to be doing more harm than good. But that draw was perfect for Aether Vial.
That's kind of what he needed.
A land, a Vial, and then just a really nice curve of cards to Vial through.
Well, you see the cards here, and you know, we had a feeling Mirror Crusader, Wasteland Strangler, they were going to come in. They did. Rest in Peace you weren't a fan of, and I think for the most part I agree. You know, Rest in Peace, that game just would have been kind of whatever.
It wouldn't have been a card.
You know, Raven's Crime played a little bit of a role in things there, but not too much. And you know, I imagine that if Bantu's Last Reckoning wasn't in before, I have to imagine it is going in now, but I imagine Tom brought it in.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at Jared Hall's deck list. It is 4 copies of Aether Vial, 4 copies of Path to Exile. The Path's probably not in the deck anymore. And then just a bunch of creatures.
Yeah.
So Bantu's Last Reckoning is made for matchups like this.
Well, both players are going to get to work here on the sideboards. They're our final match here. So we want to let you know that Tyler Lutz with Jund was able to take care of Sam Schaefer 2-1. So Jund, #1 overall seed, that's through. It's going to play against Jeskai Control here in a little bit. And Tom is going to play, well, Tom or Jared, pardon me. Don't want to get an assumption there, but whoever wins this match is going to play Harlan Fear, who is playing Jeskai Control. So we're going to find out who's going to win this match in just a moment between Ross and Hall. But in the meantime, if you want to play some more Modern, November 4th, SCG Regionals is the place to be. We've got a lot of cash and prizes, sweet tokens, sweet playmat, and a whole bunch more information from Jeremy Knoll right now.
Don't miss the StarCityGames.com Season 2 Regional Championships. On November 4th, play Modern at any one of the 10 regional locations across the U.S. The first 200 players to register for each event will receive a Hammer and Scale playmat and Kraken token just for signing up. Regional Championships are part of the SCG Tour with SCG points for all players. Top 8 competitors earn a trophy, a share of $5,000, and a spot on the Season 2 SCG Invitational. Visit go.starcitygames.com/regionals to learn more.
Plant your flag, November 4th. Go.starcitygames.com/regionals. Find the regionals closest to you. Get that awesome playmat token as well, $5,000 cash and prizes, and of course, invites to the Season 2 Invitational at the Berglund Center in Roanoke, Virginia. Again, our updates here. Tyler Lutz with Jund, #1 overall seed, takes care of Sam Schaefer. So Jund takes care of Grixis Death Shadow. Going to play against Brandon Dalloway, who's playing Jeskai Control. Took care of Clay Spickelmeyer 2-0. Spickelmeyer on 5-color Death Shadow. So on one side, we've got Jund versus Jeskai. On the other, Harlan Fear was able to take care of Caleb Shear. Fear playing Jeskai Control. Shear, of course, playing Blue-Red Gift Storm. So Fear, the #6 overall seed, he's through. And he's going to play the winner of this match between Tom Ross playing 8-Rack and Jared Hall playing White-Black Eldrazi Taxes. Diversity, my friend.
Yeah.
Diversity, diversity.
And not a bunch of turn 3 decks.
No. No, not really.
Jund, Jeskai, 8-rack, white-black Eldrazi.
Notably, our most played decks here this weekend, Elves, Affinity, Eldrazi-tron, none in the top 8. Maybe a little bit of a surprise there. Grixis that Shadow through. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And I'm curious to see who's going to be on the play here, actually. That's a real question.
I think Tom's taking the draw. This Eldrazi Texas deck is nowhere near fast enough to warrant Tom taking the play. And he doesn't have something like Chalice that could, make you need to take the play for a particular reason.
Well, Tom has chosen to draw first yet again. And I think Jared Hall's taking a long look, trying to figure out if he's going to keep his hand. The tough part is mulliganing against 8-rack not a good idea?
If it's close, you keep.
He's going to go down to 6.
Yeah, and mulliganing on the play against this deck. I mean, you know the feeling when you mulligan against Jund when you're playing a creature deck.
You feel horrible.
You're like, this creature's just going to die, and this 4-mana spell is just going to Thoughtseize out of my hand. This is that experience, but so much worse.
Yeah, one of the things about playing against the Thoughtseize Inquisition of Kozilek decks, I like to keep somewhat land-heavy hands.
Right.
With 4 lands and 3 spells, because I know I'm going to get hit by at least 1 discard spell, probably 2.
You want to be able to top deck well.
And be able to play the card you top deck. That's so important. So sometimes you keep what people would consider to be some loose ones, because the discard comes in a hurry. And this one's not looking much better here for Jared Hall. And a mulligan at 5 is almost a death sentence. Has any deck really punished mulligans as much as 8-rack does? If you think about maybe historically?
This is an extreme case, this deck. And I can't imagine it, I mean, all the decks that basically trade off of, I'm just trading 1 for 1 on the basic resources of the game, land destruction decks that are all counter spells, and the discard decks do that more effectively than I think those other decks do.
Jared Hall going to go down to 5 cards now. Remember, he's on the play. Ross is on the draw. Ross selecting the draw with 8-rack.
So another reason it's important for Magic not to put all of its power level in counter spells and terminates. If that's what's going on, you can never win when you mulligan to 5, because there's no card that you can hope to draw that your opponent can interact with.
Sure. Makes sense. Maybe 8-rack is a way to maybe get an edge on the format here.
Well,
who knows?
Ross has been having pretty solid results with it.
Yeah?
He made it sound like the sideboard was still a work in progress. He wasn't totally happy. It sounds like he could use a, Curse of Deathhold style effect, Knight of Soul's Betrayal. I think that would help with the Affinity matchup quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah, Affinity does seem to be probably a tough one for this deck.
Looking at the deck list, I haven't watched it in action, but it does seem like it's a fast deck. This 8-rack can't really answer cranial plating. It does a lot with its lands, and if that's a way that you want to attack 8-rack, I would start looking at, make your lands do something. You need to squeeze, multiple cards out of every card.
No discard spell to start here for Ross. Maybe he's got a Wrench Mine here on turn 2. He does. And when you mulligan to 5 and you get targeted by Wrench Mine, don't have a lot of artifacts in your deck, this isn't fun. There goes. Thought Not Searing Reality Smasher going to the graveyard. Boy, that's tough. Vial the draw. He'll play a Vial. Now, this was the recipe of success in game number 1. We'll see if he can do it again.
Well, this is the scenario where I don't like the Vial, where it's just in a hand with lands and spells. I mean, it's not Vial's fault. He's on 5 cards, but...
Here's Smallpox. Tom wants to take care of the last card in Jared's hand. Fetid Heath.
And
Ghost Quarter gone.
Quite a display of strength here from Tom, because typically he waits until there's a creature on the other side of the battlefield before using Smallpox.
Well, I think that might be the explanation. It's Shrieking Affliction. He wants to get the hand taken care of and now really get to work. His Vial's going to go up to 1.
Yeah, I think we might hit, already be in Hall could stack his deck and not be able to get out of this territory.
You think we're already there?
We might already be there.
Tom does have another copy of Smallpox in hand. Mutavault too, so he's going to play Mutavault. Looks like he's just going to pass the turn.
Yeah, he might as well hold the Smallpox at this point, because Hall's still under this Shrieking Affliction, and really the only way I can imagine Hall catching up from this point is a Dark Confidant sneaks through and lets him crawl back in.
Here's an Eldrazi Temple. There's a Displacer.
And now the Smallpox gets to be maximally effective.
Yeah, it gets even better now, unfortunately for Jared. Ross with a couple copies of Fatal Push in hand.
And the question, I think, in Ross's position here, does he want a Smallpox just this board away and pitch his Swamp, or does he want to play a Swamp, pitch a Fatal Push, and allow himself to attack with Mutavault this turn?
I think your question just got answered. He's going to discard the Fatal Push. Ross with 2 cards in hand. Fatal Push and a Swamp. He'll play the Swamp, fire up the Mutavault, going to bring him down to 10, 7 on the upkeep with Shrieking Affliction. Jared Hall's in a world of trouble, folks. Levile's going to go up to 3. He's going to try to get a little lucky. Drew a Sculler. Didn't work out. So Ross will untap. He'll draw a card. Funeral Charm.
Or you can dome him.
Yeah. I think that's what we're going to see him do, maybe. Yeah, he says. You wanted to give him +2/+1, didn't you?
Well, slightly loose sequencing there, because if Hall had drawn Path to Exile, it's, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The game's over. It doesn't matter.
If he did draw Path, it would have been bad.
Yeah.
Would have been bad. There's a Temple, and that is going to do it. So Tom Ross going to win this game and match you over Jared Hall 2-1. 8-rack. Claims another victim as he takes care of white-black Eldrazi taxes. And that means we're going to have a Tom Ross Harlan Fear rematch here on one side of the bracket.